All right. Well, um, you'll see some pictures randomly of some of the athletes that were sporting in different clubs and what it means for them in terms of what kind of help and support they need. But really, just to give you a quick intro to Nujum, if you don't know Nujum, um, you know, we started off really just under 2 years ago, and we've got extensive background in working with athletes. I work with a lot of cricket athletes, so I work heavily with Adil Rashid and Moin Ali, even Saqib I work with. I've got good relationship with the cricketers. I've been working a long time with them, and Ebbs, who was formerly working at the FA, works a lot with the footballers themselves. And with this kind of background, we noticed quite a bit of a trend. The trend was that Muslim athletes did need some help when it came to their faith matters. They needed help and they needed answers. And it was difficult for them in the environment that they're in. As you know, athletes are in a bubble, and it's very difficult for them to get answers, for them even to speak to their organizations about their needs. And the way we started the conversation is just getting a get together and getting people together and meeting and discussing some of the issues that really they were facing and how we could help as a group of volunteers and now as we set up an organization. The vision is very clear. It's to see a world where Muslim athletes flourish, fulfill their potential. How we want that to take place is really by the mission that we have, which is by building, empowering and supporting a community of Muslim athletes, to empower also our future generations to be positive and inspirational members of society. Sometimes those words are a bit loaded. You always hear this positive and inspirational members of society, but as you know, athletes, whether they're in Premiership, whether they're in the England cricket team, Muslims, or whether they're the county teams, our youth do look up to them, and they are at par with pop stars and whoever's in the public face nowadays, and thus they do have a big effect on our youth, and the youth of this country, and that's why we think it's really important for them to show and show who they are and also what they believe in and how they can contribute and guide our younger generations towards being these inspirational members of society. That's the picture of Khadija. She was the first Muslim female jockey, and you can hear about her story if you go online and check it out. What's the scope of our organization? We give faith advice and direction all the time to athletes, and I get a call every day, every 2 days. We get email messages, so many different pieces of advice and needed and direction on parts of their life all the time. Counselling and mental health support. That goes throughout anyway for the wider community, right? Everybody needs help sometimes, and we're there to provide that, especially for athletes who they're in a very unique situation. Building community projects with athletes, getting them involved in the community, something that really relieves them. And sometimes they want to give back and they just don't know how to do it. We sort of provide that sort of connection. That's also inspiring athletes to be positive role models. Now, that's more to do with getting them working along with youth organizations, sporting bodies, going out there into the communities, especially their local communities. And also turning up and giving talks to schools and so forth. All of that is part of that. And the last bit is what we're doing here today, which is educational training and support for organizations. I mean, this is what we're here. This is what we're doing. This is one of the most important parts, because every sport that you do has an organization, has a body. They need to understand where athletes are coming from. They need to understand that they maybe need educating about what happens to the athletes and why they think like they do sometimes and what goes through their lives. So we give a lot of that support, and that's really why we brought out the Muslim Athlete Charter last year, which has been taken on amazingly, shall I say, throughout all the different sporting areas. And this charter just looks at how an organization, a body, a club can help Muslim athletes in all of their areas, and at the same time get a connection with the Muslim community, at the same time show the community that Muslim athletes are just like any other athlete. They need support, and they have needs, and by accepting them, you actually give a lot of strength to these athletes for them to feel like they're accepted. Okay, this workshop's about Ramadan Basics. It's a few slides put together about what are the basics of Ramadan, what actually is Ramadan. People generally know the basics, and usually when I do an extended kind of workshop, and especially one in personal, there's a bit of a Q&A, which is difficult to do online, unfortunately, where I'd ask you, what do you know about Ramadan? The majority of people know that it's a time where Muslims fast. So this one just expands a bit more about where it comes from and why Muslims actually do fast. Most of the world's 1.6 billion Muslims will be observing Ramadan. Okay, this means that there's a good chance, a strong chance, that you're going to encounter somebody, okay, whether it's a friend like you've got here, a co-worker, the barista at your local Starbucks, your child's teacher, somebody's going to be fasting, celebrating the month of Ramadan, and their life is going to change for that whole month. And it's good to understand why it does change. What is Ramadan? Well, the word comes actually from the Islamic calendar. The Islamic faith has a calendar called the Hijri calendar, and this calendar started when Prophet Muhammad, God's peace and blessings be upon him, when he migrated from a city called Mecca to a city called Medina in Saudi Arabia, now modern day Saudi Arabia, and that was over 1400 years ago. When he migrated, that was the first year. Ramadan also is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. Islam is built on 5 pillars. It's one of the pillars of the faith. That means that everybody must fast who's able to fast. Ramadan is slightly shorter, okay, than the normal Gregorian calendar. It's by 11 days shorter than the normal Gregorian calendar. So every single year, Ramadan comes forward 11 days. So last year we started it on the 13th of April. This year, 12th, 13th. This year we're going to be starting on the 1st or the 2nd. The Hijra calendar is at 1443 at the moment. So you can see the difference there between that and the Gregorian calendar. This year, like I said, it's going to start on the 1st or 2nd of April. It'll last for 30 days, approximately, give and take, 29, 30 days. And the end of the month will be on the 1st or 2nd of May. It's the official calendar in several of the Gulf countries, especially Saudi Arabia. But most of the Muslim countries in the world, they follow the Gregorian calendar for civil purposes and only turn to the Hijra calendar for religious purposes. And I think the Emirates itself was one of the first ones that started with this particular change.
Yeah.
Let's go on to why do Muslims fast? Well,
okay, yeah, I'll keep you posted. Yeah.
Okay,
right.
so
Thank you.
Sorry,
Bye.
Okay, why do Muslims fast? Well, it's adjoined for Muslims to fast in the Quran, which is the book of the Muslims, right? So the Quran really is the word of God. Muslims believe that God, through Archangel Gabriel, gave revelation to Prophet Muhammad, be peace and blessing be upon him, and that revelation was what became the Quran. In the 2nd chapter called Al-Baqarah, which means the cow, in verse 183, God actually says, and I'll say the Arabic, he said, says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kutiba alaykum as-siyamu kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun. God says, look, fasting has been prescribed for you like it's prescribed for the nations before you, so that you may be God-fearing or be righteous or come closer to God. And Muslims, as many of you will know, believe in most of the prophets that we see in Christianity, from Adam to Jesus, Moses to Jesus, all of those prophets, the last of those being Prophet Muhammad. Fasting is compulsory on anybody who reaches the age of puberty. Girl or boy, whoever reaches that age, fasting becomes obligatory. So for 30 days approximately, the fast is from every day from sunrise to sunset, no food or drink. Unlike other fasts from different faiths, no drinking is allowed. The fast itself can be long in the summer months. We're getting better now. I mean, the fasting now is probably going to be somewhere around 16 hours, I think. No, a bit more, less than that, 14 to 16 hours. But in the summer months, it was up to 18 plus hours. What's the aim of fasting? Well, the aim is to come closer to God. So a lot of reflection happens at this time. A lot of character checking happens at this time. You usually find Muslims a bit more lenient in this month, a bit more softer, more reflective. That's the aim of actual fasting. Fasting's aim is not to abstain from food or drink for the sake of food or drink. Yes, to reflect on people not having food or drink is one of the wisdoms of fasting. But the main reason is fasting is there a month for people to reflect on themselves, about their character and their relationship with God. And that's what the main purpose of fasting is. And in this particular month, you'll find that a lot of people, and athletes especially, I find this, spend much more time in acts of worship, whether it's reading the Quran, whether it's taking time out and contemplating, whether it's going to the mosque in the evening. And in the month of Ramadan, you'll notice that, and we'll go through it, that a lot of people will go to the mosque every single evening to pray, in congregational prayer. And athletes especially, because athletes are in a bubble all the time. It's difficult for them sometimes to just be with the community all the time, whether they're training, whether they're traveling. What happens is when this month turns up, many of the athletes that we speak to find it an opportunity for themselves to really interact with the community more, to go out to the mosque, to meet people, to invite people to open their fast together, to actually go and start their fast together. So you find a lot more reflection, a time of self-reflection, and a time for acting out these acts of worship. There are exemptions to fasting. Those who haven't reached puberty, that's the first category, of course. Those who are traveling is another category, and I'm going to speak about traveling. Those who are ill, okay, women who are breastfeeding or pregnant, they don't need to fast. Those that are ill, traveling, and pregnant and breastfeeding, they have to make up their fasts before the next Ramadan. So somebody stopped traveling after the month of Ramadan, he makes up the fasts that he missed. The person who's ill, and this is a temporary illness, when they get better, they make up the fast. Same with a woman who's breastfeeding or pregnant. She can make up the fast before the next Ramadan or after that Ramadan. The person who's terminally ill, somebody's got a long illness, they don't. What they do is that for every fast they miss, they feed poor people. And that's organized in the community, whether it's in the UK, whether it's abroad, they can send money across so people are fed because they're not able to fast. Traveling, the reason why I signaled out traveling is because athletes, as you know, will be traveling. What we've noticed working with athletes is a lot of athletes don't really understand this whole area. And because they don't understand this whole area of traveling, what usually happens is that they usually fast all the month. Now, God gives an exemption to people, as I've said here, and they need to understand this exemption. So it's good for you guys to understand this exemption too. Where does it occur? What actually is traveling? Well, traveling in the Muslim community has different opinions. Now, these are not opinions just of people. They're jurisprudence. They come from Islamic law itself. What is traveling? They have different opinions from the jurists of what traveling is. Some say it's traveling more than 80 kilometers outside your normal residence. As soon as you go past that, you're known as a traveling. Some people believe it's not to do with that. It's to do with time. If, for example, you're traveling you're traveling for more than 2.5 hours, then that is actually traveling. There's different opinions, and we can go into those some other time. You can find so many references on that. The important thing is, though, that traveling in itself is something which takes a lot of toll on people. Okay, Muslims are allowed to, Muslims should be fasting 5 times a day. This is normally what a Muslim is ordained to do. Some Muslims don't, some Muslims do. And if they do, when they travel, they're allowed to combine their prayers and even shorten them. It shows you that traveling is a burden on people. And for this reason, we've given guidance in Nujum. I know Ebs has spoken extensively about this before, to athletes to understand when they're allowed to take a break because they're traveling. And especially for footballers, when we speak to them, who travel every second weekend, for example, and they'll be traveling back and forth throughout, is that it's a time to recuperate. And unlike normal I'd like to say a normal person doesn't exert himself, but of course, it can be you can be any type of profession and you exert yourself. But an athlete really does exert his body, and for them to get that break, which they're allowed to do in their faith, it's a time for them to maybe refresh themselves again and go for that second lot of fasting. So it is important to understand traveling a bit more about it, and if anybody needs any more information, they can contact us and we can speak through it with them. And we've spoken before to many nutritionists and coaches about it, and actually we've actually spoken directly to athletes and explained to them when they can and what they should do at that particular time. Now, the activities of Ramadan, like I spoke previously, a lot of it is revolved around acts of worship. Fasting is for the whole month of Ramadan. Praying the night prayer in congregation. Now, that's a recommended act to do every single night of the month of Ramadan. Now, if you live near a mosque or you see mosques on your travels, you'll see that in the month of Ramadan, now it's going to be April, the whole month of April, every single night they will be open much later than normal, and there'll have lots of crowds of people going to the mosques wherever you live now. And every single night you'll find Muslims going to pray the whole of those 30 nights. So that's one of the main acts of worship in the actual month, besides the fast itself. The last 10 nights of Ramadan, it's a very special night because in it is a special night called the Night of Power, where people try to do much more worship until to the night time. So you'll find a lot of athletes want to spend that night in worship, whether it's in their residence or at the mosque itself. There's the meals that you start the fast with, the meal that you start the fast and the meal that you end the fast with. The one you start with is called sahur. This meal is the one that everybody gets together. See, Islam, especially the way the Muslim communities are, Islam as a faith itself is a very communal faith, congregational faith, and we fast together, we pray together, we break fast together, we go to a pilgrimage together. There's a lot of together with family, with friends. So the pre-dawn meal, the meal before you start your fast, it's quite a special meal. A lot of people get together for it. This meal itself, it depends on the culture that the person's from. Remember, Islam spreads across many different cultures. So some people have a quite heavy suhoor, some people have a very light one. We always recommend, especially for athletes in a nutritional guide, to not have a very heavy one. As you can understand, we always explain to them that, especially leading up to the next prayer, that when you finish your prayer, don't eat too much and eat in intervals going up to the suhoor time. The breaking fast meal, iftar, it's quite a community affair. You have massive gatherings for this throughout the month. A lot of people get together to open their fast. And that was one of the discussions we are having with many different clubs and organizations, that we really do recommend that if that's possible, that the club does a community iftar with the local community, or does it with their actually Muslim athletes, or brings in their if they have academy players or an academy setup system with Muslim academy athletes, to bring them in and get the wider team and the wider community together and have an iftar together, Middlesex iftar. This year Nujum is going to be hosting one for all athletes. We did one last year. We're looking probably to get up to about 100 athletes to come together. Athletes only, a closed event, to break their fast together. We think it's a really special time, and it means a lot to the athletes that the club understands what they're going through and they're enjoying in this. And funny enough, a couple of years ago, in the World Cup, I was invited by some of the England cricketers to go and spend some time with the South African team. They were staying at the Marriott down on the Thames, which was the old county hall, and they had a team iftar, and I was present there for that. And it was amazing to see the whole team together. They actually had quite a few of their non-Muslim colleagues who fasted that whole day with them, just to feel what it was like to fast and appreciate what the athletes were going through. And it was such an amazing event, because it was a time of relaxation, but also a quite a spiritual time. And I think it's highly recommended that a club does that together with the athletes. breaking the fast together with Muslim and family, you're going to find that. So athletes will try to do that a lot. And we always encourage that athletes should get together with their families and ask the other non-Muslim athletes' families to come together for that period. Like I said before, the general increase of worship, such as reading the Quran. A lot of emphasis in Ramadan is about giving charity, and I'm not sure you know, but per head, the Muslim community gives more per person than any other faith or non-faith part of the community per head in the United Kingdom. The reason why is because in the Islamic faith, giving charity is actually part of the faith. It's called sadaqah, and it's actually part of the faith to the extent that we have another part of giving called zakah, which is part of the 5 pillars, which is if you earn more than a certain amount of money, you've kept a certain amount of money over a 12-month period, then whatever's left of that money, whatever you've got, you give a certain percentage, 2.5% to the poor. It's part of the faith. So Muslims give a lot of money to charity in this month of Ramadan. You'll see that every single day the WhatsApp messages about giving to different countries, different people in famine, different people are going through conflicts, helping them out in this particular month. So that's a strong part of our faith, and it's actually exacerbated actually in this particular time, in this particular month. How does Ramadan end? Well, it's determined by the new moon. So as we're a calendar, which is a moon-based calendar, okay, it's not a solar-based calendar, because of the new moon, as you know, you've got to see the new moon, right? And Muslims, you'll notice, they're very active on 2 dates, the beginning of the month and the end of the month. They'll be going out and trying to look for the new moon. If they can't, they'll go online and see if any other country has sighted the new moon. As soon as the new moon is sighted, that's when Ramadan starts. And as soon as it comes again, that's when it ends. And the next day after that is called Eid. And Eid in Arabic comes from the word Aada. It means something reoccurring. And the Eid that happens is quite a big celebration. There's morning prayers. Everybody goes and visits their families. But before that, they go for the morning prayer. After that, they give gifts to family members, to other Muslims. The whole day is full of going and visiting people, spending time, having food with your family. And we always encourage our organizations to have an Eid gathering, even if it's a week later, a couple of days later, with the athletes and their families, and invite everybody and give gifts to the families if possible, any kind of gift, but just for them to understand that you're part of that celebration and you're embracing what they are going through. And it's really, really important. Another element of giving is, as you can see, the giving of food to the poor on the morning before the Eid prayer. That's a massive thing for Muslims, and it's compulsory. You give money either to an organization that distributes food to the poor in this country or abroad, and it's given a day before, usually, or the morning before the Eid prayer, which happens on the day of Eid in the morning, and that's to the poor, so they could also have some food on that day. Some of the Eid greetings, it's great for me to send you some of these greetings because it gives you an understanding of what people are saying. So when Ramadan starts, you'll find that a lot of Muslims say to each other, Ramadan Mubarak. That's what they say, which means have a blessed or happy Ramadan. So you can say that to your Muslim colleagues. It's a great greeting to say. The other one is Ramadan Kareem, which means have a generous Ramadan. These are the two sayings. So you'll find if you go to your social media, you'll see these messages and graphics saying Ramadan Mubarak. A lot of the clubs do it. They'll have a picture of a crescent or something, and they'll say Ramadan Mubarak, Ramadan Kareem from whichever organization, and that's what's usually said. On the day of Eid, you say Eid Mubarak, and that means, of course, happy, blessed Eid. And you'll see those messages go out as well, and there'll be 1,000 messages going out on WhatsApps and feeds and Twitter saying this particular message. And like I said before, Eid celebration includes visiting to family and gifts, and a lot of cooked food and distribution to network to your neighbors and work colleagues. You'll see a lot of that actually happens. The nutritional aspect I did speak about earlier on, but we do have a guide on it. So I hope that Ebs could probably forward that guide. And this year, what we're doing, like last year, is we're producing a Ramadan pack or a Ramadan gift box for Muslim athletes whoever we can get hold of, whoever registers with us. Last year we distributed about 300. This year I think we're going between 400 and 450 boxes, which were going out to all athletes. We had them throughout the football leagues and cricketers too. We had last year, and hopefully we can pass them on to you guys to pass on to your cricketers who are Muslim. The nutritional aspects are so important because athletes misunderstand sometimes what nutrition is, even though they have a nutritionist. And by abstaining from food for so long, their body does change. And we have to be really careful. They need to be careful the kind of food they get eating. A latest study by the WHO showed that in many of the countries that have a Muslim majority, Muslims actually put on weight in Ramadan, even though they're eating less, supposedly. All right. So people are under the false notion. And last week, the ECB launched their Ramadan sort of campaign with us, and we had Moin Ali, we had Rashid, and so forth, speaking about how they treat nutrition. And I think it's really, really important for us to understand. So as athletes don't have food to drink or food or drink throughout the day, it's great to give them the right kind of food to open their fast with. Now, dates and milk is one of the first things that must.
That's right, it's frozen. I'll carry on. I think what he was talking about was it looks better frozen than when he's speaking, actually, right? Dates and milks are usually the things that we usually eat first. Water, and then so that opens up our stomach a little bit, as you can imagine. After not eating for 14 to 15 hours a day, your stomachs shrink in size. So usually it's good to have some dates and some milk or some water. Give it about 10-15 minutes, and then you can go have your your first meal. Usually that's for me, maybe mash. I don't know what you have, especially in the South Asian communities, a lot of oil-based food like samosas and onion bhajis and pakoras and biryanis. For me, I try to have some grilled food, some grilled chicken or fish and some rice. And that's really, I think that's about.
Yeah, it's got a long way to go. We don't actually have.
Sorry, Jamil, you cut out for a bit, but I carried on for you.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry about that.
Right.
Did I cut off what?
I'll stop talking.
Where did I cut off from?
From the dates and milk. Oh.
Okay, all right. So basically, did you fill all that in, or shall I go for it?
Yeah, I filled all of that in.
Okay,
you stopped for about a good 2 minutes.
All right. Sorry about that. I don't know my internet connection. It's a new house, so poor. I was going to say about the nutritional guide that we're not saying that the nutrition guide that we made is the be and end all. We've got a lot to learn when it comes to what athletes need in terms of their nutrition, and especially when it comes to cricket, because even though we work with athletes who are cricketers, we don't have a massive data to see what goes through their lives and what their kind of routine is. So it'd be great to get some feedback from you guys too. That's everything anyway. It's great that my internet connection was decent towards the end. I'm happy to take any questions that you guys have. By all means, please fire away.
I have a question for Mash. Mash, what do you eat when you break your fast usually?
I'm actually quite healthy. I don't touch no fried food the whole month. My house is banned from frying fried food. I tend to stick to salad. The only time of the year I actually eat salad.
Can I ask a question? I'm just curious why do people tend to put on weight during Ramadan? Is it because they eat the wrong foods or too much food when they break the fast, or is there any thoughts on that?
There's two reasons really. One is because they eat the wrong types of food. What happens usually is they eat a lot of carbs and a lot of fried food. Mash should know about that. So a lot of carbs. The other thing they do is that the body, as you know, it's a really intelligent piece of kit. So it knows that you're not eating anything all day. So it starts storing. Okay, it starts storing. A lot of people also, what they do is they reduce their activities in that month. We really do encourage people to carry on their gyms and their football, and we encourage all of that. And as you saw, we had football players who were breaking their fast, especially from Leicester team, we encourage athletes to carry on their normal life and people to carry on their normal lives, but a lot of people don't, so they do put on weight in this month.
Thanks. Actually, I've got one more question. You said any questions? There's no stupid questions, so it might be one. But so I work with the cricket team, and we've got a match in the middle of summer, and we've got a Muslim athlete who's fasting, who I see is dehydrated and showing signs of dehydration, and maybe even slight concerned about him. Would it be wrong to offer him water?
Yeah. Well, the thing is that what you need to do, I'm sure you do this, is to have that conversation with him first, to discuss with him, and we recommend it heavily that sit down with him and say, look, you're fasting on this date, all right? It's probably going to be a long day. How are you going to deal with it? How are you going to prepare for it? And it's really, really important you do that. If they're not traveling, then of course they'd want to fast, right? So if you're going to offer him water, he may find it offensive. But if you've had that conversation and you think the fast is actually, remember, you can break your fast if it's a medical reason to break your fast, right? If the guy's on the pitch and gets heat stroke, he can break his fast, right? Fasting is not like black and white, but you've got to assess that, and you've got to have those mature discussions, and athletes need to open up. A lot of athletes don't open up. They won't even tell you they're fasting, right? Because they don't know the backlash. They don't know what people are thinking. They don't want to get, somebody say, well, actually, we won't have them in the team. We'll have them in the subs because it's a hot day and he's fasting. They don't want to. I mean, we spoke to Wayne Ali about this extensively. And Mo said, he got a lot of support from the England team when it came to fasting and when he was playing, and how they understood what he was going through. So it's great for you guys to actually speak to them, and I think they'll be very positive if you do that.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, as always, obviously, if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to us, obviously, or Mash or Steve. I think obviously Mash is probably your first point of contact. I'm more than happy to. Obviously, we'll be supporting Middlesex quite closely throughout the month and for the upcoming months. So yeah, looking forward to it. As I said, obviously, Middlesex have been the lead because of them. Another county has also signed the charter, and we're already speaking to, I think, 3 other counties for them to sign the charter. So it's a turning point for cricket, and to support and obviously grow the game and make it as inclusive as possible, really.